All right. Good evening, everybody. Thank you for joining us. I know it's not always easy to peel yourself away from your work and what you got to get done, so we appreciate you joining us here tonight. We're going to be going through, as you know, the land management strategy framework. So the way that we plan this out is that I'm going to be talking for about 20 minutes. I'm going to be going through this presentation, kind of catching you up on where we are right now, how we got here, and what those next steps look like. And then after that's all done, then we'll get into giving you time to speak. We want to hear your thoughts, your questions, and we're happy to answer as many of those questions as we're able to at this time. I'm joined, you'll see at the front table here, by Brian Piers, who's the Manager of Municipal Lands and Leases, and Director of Community Service, Bryce Serena. And so they'll be coming up and answering questions as those pop up as well. As I mentioned, the purpose of tonight is really, one, to go through all of these different pieces, but we are really here to hear from you. We do want to hear your input. We do want it considered as part of the decision-making process. So please, when we get to that portion, feel free to speak openly, say your piece. We have a few people around who are taking notes and recording everything that's said, just so that we can incorporate that. And we want to make sure that we do hear from you. So stand up and say what you'd like. You can ask questions. If other people are standing up at the same time, make sure that it's just orderly. Sit down and let other people have their turns, and we want to get through everybody. We have enough time that we'll be able to hear from everyone. We do want to emphasize that no decisions have been made at this point. So as we roll through the presentation, you'll see where we are right now. Everything is still in that early phase. No decision is going to be made until end of this year, early next year. So that does give us a lot of time to hear from you, consider everything that's taking place, everything that's being looked at, and then after this process and the surveys are closed, all of the feedback that we hear from you is going to be compiled and provided to council as one input to consider as part of this process. So where we are right now is the MD is looking at this land management strategy and associated policies, with the intended outcome being, the strategy to establish guidelines for future land policy and lease administration. This, I'm not going to go into a big history lesson here, but this dates back to the 1930s, when a lot of the lands that were in MD hands at the time were handed over to the province for the province to manage because the municipality didn't have the resources. Starting in about 2019, those lands started being recovered from the province back to the MD, which accounted for close to 60,000 acres. And then on top of that, the MD holds around 23,000 acres of pasture and dry land cultivation, which are separate from those tax recovery lands, adding up to our total of around 82,000 acres of land, all of which have leases that are going to expire in 2026 or 2027, which is why we're in this process now. Because those leases are coming to the end of their terms, council is obligated to look at these policies and determine how the land management approach is going to be taken moving forward. It is being done specifically because we're approaching the end of those lease terms. As you can see, these are the three types of leases: the tax recovery, the MD grazing, and the MD cultivation lands. And those are split up currently amongst approximately 92 leaseholders. When looking at the tax recovery lands, these are the lands that were forfeited due to unpaid property taxes. Those are the 58,000 that were reacquired from the province, currently rented to 34 private and community pasture leaseholders, with a rate set at 70 cents an acre or $3.20 an AUM. There's a 20-year lease term on this. This was set back in 2006, these rates. It was brought back in 2016 at the end of a 10-year term. And at the time, it was determined that it would just continue rolling forward, which brings us to the February 2026 lease term expiry date, with leaseholders on these lands able to lease their lands to the immediate family members. Leaseholders for tax recovery lands can also independently sell their leasehold interests to another eligible party, with the MD receiving an assignment fee of around $150 per AUM or $5,000 per quarter section. Oil and gas compensation on the tax recovery lands is $400 per year for each oil and gas lease located on these lease areas, with no maximum. And because of these, the majority of tax recovery leaseholders are compensated more than they pay in their rent. Now, the MD has been approached quite a bit over the years with requests for alternate uses for the tax recovery lands. We've listed a number of them here. None of these were moved forward with, obviously, but we just wanted to show you some of the different options that have been brought forward to the MD, or at least asked about. Now, if you haven't, we do have these presentations in the back, so you can feel free to kind of go through this on your own afterwards as well, in case there's anything that you want to look back on. We do also have things like the survey and some more information back there that you can feel free to grab as well. Looking at the MD grazing lands, again, 70 cents an acre, 320 in AUM. These are on a 10-year lease term, also ending in February 2026. And again, leaseholders can assign leases to immediate family members. Where this differs a little bit is that MD grazing leaseholders cannot sell their leasehold interest, and MD grazing leaseholders can potentially receive up to a maximum of half their rent back per quarter section as compensation for oil and gas loss of use and inconvenience. Looking at cultivated lands, these are divided into two categories, tendered and non-tendered. The non-tendered means that it just keeps rolling over. It's long-term leaseholders that are paying a rate of just over $71 an acre. The tendered cultivated leases are those which are surrendered back to the MD and then tendered out from that point at a rate just above $98 an acre. And those account for the minority of those cultivation leases, which are all on a 3-year lease term. And there's no consideration for oil and gas compensation on these lands dating back to 2021. This kind of lays things out a little bit more holistically. I'm going to bring Brian up to just speak to this for a moment here and just walk through some of the highlights.
Thanks, Ben. So, if you can, I know these tables are not large, but hopefully you can see what the numbers represented. And I don't want to go through every line item on this, but just to point out a few things, I guess. And each table represents a different type of lease. On the top is the tax recovery leases. 34 leaseholders, as Ben mentioned, about 70 cents an acre is what we charge for rent. And for those 58,000 acres, we only receive, I guess, about $40,000 in revenue from grazing. So, and conversely, I guess we pay back 4 times that amount in oil and gas compensation at that $400 per lease. On those lands, we receive about just over $1 million in oil and gas revenue from those. As Ben mentioned too, there's 2 tendered and non-tendered on the cultivation leases. The ones that the minority of those acres have been surrendered back to us that we've tendered, we receive, missed the one, on the grazing leases, the ones that we tendered, we get about $20 an acre or $93 per AUM. Some of those are much smaller leases. There's some scale issues with that as well, but on the non-tendered leases, they still remain at that 70 cents an acre. So I guess to point out on that too, for the 15,000 acres of non-tendered grazing lease, we collect about $10,000 in grazing revenue, and on the 1,400 acres, we get about 32,000. So you can see the discrepancy in those numbers. There is oil and gas on those lands as well, and it's a fairly minor number of dollars that are paid back in oil and gas. And just because the rent, it's only maximum half the rent of that we receive, and so it equates to about $1,300 a year. To point out again on the cultivation leases at the bottom table, the majority of those lands are still the non-tendered leases that are just rolled over year to year as those 3-year leases expire. Some of those lands have been surrendered back to us, and we've subsequently tendered them out, say about just around that $100 per acre rate. And on the non-tendered ones, council has set a rate that has averaged now in that $71 per acre. So again, lots of oil and gas, and since 2021, we haven't paid oil and gas compensation on those cultivated lands. So yeah, just on the bottom as a note, so overall revenue in grazing and in oil and gas payments, the MD receives about $2.1 million, and then that's a gross number that you can take about $165,000 off of that for the oil and gas revenue that's paid back to the leaseholders.
Thank you. Now, as part of this process, in addition to looking at what's being done in the MD right now, we also do comparator areas and look at what's happening in other areas. So we look at municipal with Lethbridge County and Vulcan County. We looked at the irrigation districts, and then Crown Land, which includes the special area board there. You can see that laid out here. I'm not going to run through all of them, but you can see looking specifically at the municipal in that last column there, the MD is coming in at the lowest rates. The more comparable rates to what the MG charges right now would be in the Crown Lands, though we are still lower in that area as well. And when you get into irrigation different districts, you're looking at different variables that apply to the rates that are presented here. And so they're not 100% apples to apples, but we do like to make sure that we're comparing as closely as possible. Also considered throughout this process is the environmental aspect. The MD is located in the Oldman subregion of dry mixed grassland region of Alberta, with around 70% of dry mixed grass in Alberta already lost, mainly due to development and then some other factors in there. With the note that the dry mixed grassland region contributes to ecological biodiversity, hosting approximately 75% of all of Alberta's species at risk. So it is something that we look at and have to account for. And then beyond that, there are a number of considerations that are sort of considered throughout this process. One of them being class soils, vegetation classifications, ratings for irrigation, environmentally significant areas, and then a number of other parameters. So there's a lot of factors that have to be considered throughout this. As we execute this process, one of the big pieces that we leaned into is the public consultation piece, because we do want to hear from you and get your input throughout this. So we are obviously doing these sessions. We had our first one yesterday in Hayes, and then tomorrow we're going to have another 2 in Tabor after this one as well. And then we have the surveys. If you haven't filled those out already, I suggest that you do. You can get them through the MD website and fill them out online. If you don't want to do that, you can certainly grab one of the hard copy versions that we have at the front and fill those out. If you do fill it out tonight, you feel free to hand it back in before you leave. We don't expect that. Take it home with you, and once you fill it in, you can drop it off at the MD office, or if you're not able to get it to us for one reason or another, phone the office and we'll figure it out from there. But we do want to make sure that we're hearing from you as much as possible. And then there are a couple of pieces that we have to align with what's legislatively appropriate or required. Looking at the financial piece, again, council has to make the decision in looking at this land management strategy and associated policies. And again, it's specifically tied to the end of the lease terms for all lease types that we're looking at. And looking at how council makes those decisions through the Municipal Government Act, council can't come to any decisions before it's brought before them, and they have to do so in a public session that you are able to attend when it comes times for those decisions to be made. And it's council's job to make sure that they're making a decision that's in the best interest of the entire MD. So public consultation, as mentioned, is going to be a big part of that decision-making process. And then as part of all of that, they're also going to be looking at things like recommendations from administration, best management practice review, which includes the jurisdictional comparator that I went over pretty quickly there, and then additional data collection and research that's going to happen as part of the next steps, which Bryce is going to go over. I will mention that once we're through these sessions and once all the surveys close, I believe on the 28th of June, we're going to be putting together a report reflective of the input that we receive from all of you as well, and that will be provided to council as well. So I'll let Bryce go over some of the next steps that we're looking at.
Thanks, Ben. So from the MDA Tabor project management perspective, I'm going to provide you just an overview, high-level overview of our project. So within community services and with regards to land management, we've developed an initial stage, which is our project intention, which has been mentioned already by Ben, is our guidance for the future land and lease administration. So what we're all here to talk about. Project team, we've identified Brian Piers being our manager of lands that most of you are familiar with or have chatted with Brian over the years. We also have a GIS team, a GIS coordinator, some GIS internal services that are available. Myself, as well as Catalyst Communications, so Ben here that's presented for us, as well as some additional resources with regards to integrity land that's provided some comparables that we've gone through here as well as in the presentation. Most of the work, leading up to today has been establishing a baseline. So we've been trying to establish a baseline history along with the lands. We've also been looking at comparators, gathering information to go forward. As far as today, where we're at here today, and then yesterday in Hayes, and going forward in Tabor tomorrow, we're looking at this public consultation component as a really key piece. Gathering feedback from the community in what was mentioned as a what we heard report. So I know this is a bit of a summary, but just as a what we heard report to go along with the information as part of our project going forward. Moving forward, we acknowledge the comment, the complexity that exists. Obviously, there's absolutely a tremendous amount of variables that go into land management, and we will be investigating a number of them. Some of the ones that we wanted to mention with regards to agricultural and environmental aspects. Soil inventory data is one of the data sets looking at quality of soil and types of soil in the region, vegetation classes, the Canada land inventory that identifies the potential for agricultural productivity. We're looking at historical significance as well as irrigatability. I got it right the first time on that one, so that's a tongue twister. That's a tough one, but irrigatability ratings, environmentally sensitive areas, and so the idea as we work through these different information sources, the idea is that we're going to be looking at mapping and trends and try to establish how the information can add value to our project, developing systems of ratings and sustainability. Suitability as we go forward. Other items that we'll be looking at is, from a management perspective, the management of the various leases, the management aspects, the management components that go into the various types of leases from administration, looking at the rental rates, looking at the contributing values with respect to the project, land, environmental, industry variables, revenue variables that all apply to the project. So those will be considered as we go forward. The intent will be to develop a series of recommendations and management practices for council consideration. So really that will be what we'll be leading up to. And today we're here to talk about the public consultation piece, which is information gathering, and it's a very key aspect of our project. And so we really hope everybody takes part and shares your feedback and comments with the MDA Tabor. Thank you.
Thank you, Bryce. And that actually brings us to the end of the presentation. We don't want to spend too much time focusing on this piece. We wanted to walk through it all, but the rest of the time is yours. We want to hear your thoughts, your feedback. If you have any questions, again, we are happy to answer those. But we'll open up the floor. If you have a thought that you'd like to share, feel free to stand up and try and speak loudly enough that everybody can hear you.
So they gave a contract out to people from anywhere from 20 to 100 years.
Absolutely. Yeah, I can certainly appreciate that. Thank you. Any other thoughts? Perfect. Thank you. Yeah, go ahead.
I made a presentation to the council the other day regarding lease rates. I had come up with an article from an Alberta finance, business finance, and he came up with some formulas, and then I used data that's his data. And my numbers, because our lease rates took such a huge jump, and there was no consultation before that contract after we signed. We just have to sign it for the law. So I had come up, there was two different methods to do it, prop share equivalent and 20% of gross margin. Those numbers came in at 52.21 an acre and 55.69 an acre. Quite a bit different than what the MD has charged us. That we have to sign the contract for the law. So I guess my question is, after all this consultation is going to happen, can those lease rates come down?
Maybe I'll let Brian speak to that a little bit further.
I think council appreciated your thoughtful numbers and data acquisition on what you presented to them the other day. I think they took it seriously and took it into account. They're aware of that there's sentiment out there that the rates went up too fast, too high, too fast. Ultimately, it does fall back on council if they feel that they had acted in haste or made a mistake. That's something that they'll have to discuss themselves and come to some resolution. But where that goes from here, I guess I can't speak to that. It does fall. I think any decision of council can be overturned if council chooses to do that. So I think you had a couple questions, I guess, as far as you're thinking if the leases were, the land was to sell itself outright to become deeded land in the hands of the MD residents, and would there be an offer to have a first right of refusal to match that? Through the Municipal Government Act, I think there's certain ways that things have to happen as far as fairness and bidding, making it equal for everybody to have the same opportunity to buy land. If that's a choice that council makes, is to sell some of these lands, it would probably go through a fair closed, or maybe not necessarily closed. It'll go through a tender process or an auction type process, likely, just to make it fair and have everyone have the same opportunity to acquire those lands. And the
I'll follow on to Fran's comment here. I'm wondering if consultation, sorry. Okay, apparently I get to be the person with the mic. Isn't that great? I'm wondering if consultation in this step is tricky because we don't know what council's thinking. We don't know the direction that you're potentially going to take. So for us to speak to that is difficult because we're not able to share opinions when we don't know what the direction potentially will be. So I'm wondering if there'll be another round of consultation once the council has a chance to kind of form up some opinions, share some of the data capture and research, and allow us to understand a little bit better how they're forming their thoughts so that we can help inform that. Thank you.
the next steps.
Yeah, so as part of the project, we certainly are open to receive that feedback, and we certainly do take note on that. And from our project perspective, you're right, we do have to move through some series of steps and some information gathering in that. And so as we go through that process, we certainly will identify information, packages of information for council's review. But certainly we did take note of that, and that'll be taken under consideration as part of our project team for sure.
I guess that being said, and we said this yesterday as well, like there's always the opportunity to get yourself in front of council if you have questions of them through this whole process as well. So they're not trying to exclude you from the process.
I guess I would ask if there's a communication strategy to stakeholders, specifically the leaseholders. Info packets, that type of thing online would be super helpful for those that can't be present at council or council.
Sure. So we've established a link on our website specifically for the land management plan, and we'll continue to populate that site with information as we go forward. As some of the stuff we're planning to collect, some of the mapping products, even if there's discussion amongst leaseholders or council that we can release, that would be something that would, and like Ben mentioned too, there will be a report that we asked, I think, for your email addresses in up front there, and there's a reason for that. We just don't collect it to sell to Amazon. It's so we can communicate with you folks as well with that report that comes out to say what everyone is saying out there, the best that we can collect and disseminate that information. We'll send that out to the folks that are here that have provided their email address as well.
I don't want to monopolize, but I do have another
Okay.
separate question.
Yep.
It's just a little easier for everybody else.
Yeah, no, that's
Sorry
fine.
about that.
Okay, and given the data that you're going to collect on the various lands, we know land is variable in this area. So my land is very different from my neighbor's land. Is there any thought to really breaking it down to parcel by parcel to really understand that specific piece of land instead of creating a policy en masse across the entire MD? I don't have any more, so I'm going to give this back.
That's it. You can have as many questions as you'd like, but I think that speaks to something that Bryce had said too. We're going to take a more granular look at all the lands, and I think that's very important. As you say, each piece of land isn't created equally. It has different production capabilities. Just speaks to what Mrs. Dreamer was talking about on her lease versus someone that's 3 miles away may be significantly different. So yeah, that'll be something you'll take into account for sure.
Besides put this back up for tender, excuse me, we've already paid to get it tendered to your name, first of all. And then who's going to pay for the improvements like fencing, dugouts, wells, power, reseeding this grass? Now, if it goes back for tender, we're going to have to put our money back up again because now it's improved. So if somebody comes along, bids higher because all the improvements are on it. You know, we've fixed this land up for the MD of Tabor. We've done work. We've fenced it. We've dug dugouts. We've got wells. We've put power into it just to run our wells and reseeding. And all that costs money. So if it goes up for tender again, what does the guy bid? Excuse me.
You're bidding on your own improvements, too.
Yeah.
That's come up often, and we've talked to different jurisdictions as well that has that same issue. Say we've talked to the irrigation district. Some Bow River here does it short-term leases, and there's no consideration for improvements on those lands because they're such short-term leases, and there's no incentive, I guess, to put investment in those leases. But equity amounts is something that we've talked about in the office there, and how to address that. And everyone does it a bit differently, but I think that'll be part of the discussion as well. It's not lost on us that you folks have done good things to the land to make it as productive as it possibly can be in some pretty challenging areas. That may be one of the policies that come out of this is if we do tender, are these out again, maybe there's some equity piece that has to come along with that. I can't say yes or no what that might look like, or there is or there isn't, but that'll be part of the discussion for sure.
This part about tendering out the land, I know looking around here, there's guys that had land in their family 100 years, 60 years, 70 years, whatever. Now you're going to go for tender. Does that mean that we have to bid against the teacher's pension fund, or maybe they're even here, a surface corporation that has millions of dollars? Like the land that's been in these families for 50, 100, 120 years. All of a sudden we're going to have to bid against somebody that has really deep pockets that are going to pay $1,500 for grazing leases. Well, you can't pay that if you're an ordinary farmer. Tendering really scares me because I think we're going to lose the land, and the only one that's going to benefit is the MD.
So I'll speak as a successor, right? So I am the next generation of farming, and you take away and put this up to tender, and the next generation isn't there. So our family settled the land. This is our original homestead. The intention is that we will move on farm and take over, and we will eliminate that from our family. So I would ask the MD consider original landholders in a separate category due to historical significance, and also understanding we're stewards of that land. That is more than land to us, much more than land to us. And that historical significance has to carry weight in this decision. And I know you said it, but I need to emphasize how important it is to our family's history, and I mean generations of families.
Yeah, thanks for that. The stewardship that has occurred on this land isn't because the MD of Tabor has been forcing it upon people. They do it because it's what's best for their operation and what's best for next year. So in this country, next year is everything. As you know, if you abuse the land one year, it could take 2 or 3 years to recover from that. So everyone's talking about tendering land, that it's like it's a done deal and that's what's going to happen. That's certainly not a decision that has been by any stretch. I mean, that's in your eyes, that might be the worst case scenario, but I don't. That's certainly not priority one at this point. I don't believe, but it's one of the options that'll be discussed.
Has council gone in any direction? What is the priority for council?
Do you want to? Yeah, let's let everyone hear your question, I guess. Glenn?
Yeah, I gotta start yelling. So, has council given any direction in what they favor, in which direction they're gonna go with this land? Have they voiced any priorities yet?
No. The simple answer is no. So we're having these sessions to see what people think, what their opinions are, and what they feel is important to them and their families. And we're hearing that tonight. But no, there's been no decisions and really very little discussion on where that policy might fall. We can hear you.
If the land is coming to the end of a tenant, for example, can we go through a drought like we've had here, drought of the century, some people say? Well, in 3 years ago, we got about 2 inches, 2.5 inches of rain over there. Last year, we got 1.5 inches. This year, we got 0. We have reduced the cow herd to protect
We've heard those comments before on the connection between the length of the term and the degree of stewardship of that land, and I think those points are valid. That people will tend to abuse that land if they have no connection to it or no longevity in that lease. So I think those points are taken, and that it'll be noted in our notes as your comments. Thanks, Jerry.
I think we have to understand the ecological uniqueness of our land as well. So we've had the University of Lethbridge out on our native grass, and they're finding species of plants they've never seen before. And they actually are potentially cures for cancer. So you get somebody out there that doesn't care about that, and doesn't care about true stewardship, and we lose that too, you know? So perhaps you bring stewardship into this and require a certain level of, you know, land proof that we are actually taking care of and analyzing that land, but to take it away and make it a business might not be the right thing.
Yeah, I think all you folks in this room appreciate there's more value to grasslands than just dollars and cents. That's not lost. That's
stated, I don't think local guys can afford to compete against these big outfits that are here, like you mentioned here. So, you know, if you put it up for tender, it could be a dangerous thing, you know, you just go on, the local guys will lose out. And then on the second part, will the council, all the council members be able to make a decision on this? Or guys are cattle eliminated from it?
that speaks to the pecuniary interest is how the Municipal Government Act speaks to that, and I think Bryce has made a few notes on that as well, because that was a question that was brought up in Hayes yesterday as well.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, so from a pecuniary interest, there is a summary that is available, and so if you go online, there is a summary sheet that we provided online. So I don't want to read it off word for word, but certainly the summary is based on legal advice the municipalities received as a corporation, and in summary, really it gives a guidance from the MGA under Section 172 that outlines the councillors that have pecuniary interest. And that is individual for each councillor. So they have to look at, you know, their personal circumstances and how it applies. So whether they're, you know, they've given examples of whether they're part of a grazing association, whether they have investment in there, and then the decision is left to each individual councillor to make. There's an opportunity in the meetings for councillors to declare a pecuniary interest. And the MGA is specific about what it does as far as disclosing of the interest, abstaining from voting in the meetings, abstaining from any discussions, and even to leave the room when the discussions are in place. So that would be when there's a pecuniary interest in place that's been identified by a particular councillor. And then obviously the councillors that are left in the room would be part of the vote. So that would be based on quorum in the meetings and such. I do have to say I did want to share a thought I'd had to as well with regards to pecuniary interest. You know, my 22 years with the MD Tabor, I got to share experience that I've had that's really positive in this frame of reference is that so many times in the past we've had different questions and different topics come up in the municipality, and council's made a very intentional effort to make sure that we treat these conversations, these topics as a whole, as a municipality as a whole. And many times have I had maps where in my past capacity, where I've had to do maps where made a map and then actually had to remove our council division lines so that really we look at the whole municipality as a whole and we keep that frame of reference. So I wanted to share that as just some history and my experiences, and I hope that does contribute a little bit to the thinking in that, just that the councillors that are at the table, you know, when we are presenting the information, we really do try to take that whole municipal approach as a whole rather than individual. So.
Yeah.
It's gave an opportunity for a lot of young farmers, myself, many farmers who've farmed here, ranchers who needed a place to put cattle, right? It's given them that opportunity. And as Vauxhall, as a member of Vauxhall Stock Grazing, we've been able to graze on the tax recovery lands over the years, which has been appreciated, and we've taken care of them and stewarded them, and you know, if you go out and look around, you can see that, right? If you drive around, you can see the lands, you can see how they are, you can see they're not abused, they're good grasslands, and they've supported the community, and they've not only supported the families involved, but they've supported the entire community of Vauxhall. So if you go around the community, you'll see that. You'll see, you go to the rink, you'll see that. You go to the pool, you'll see that. You go to the fire department, you'll see that. You go to the library, you're going to see that. The community as a whole has benefited from these lands being here, and that should be taken into account. That should be some type of value. We've worked well together with the MD in the past. We've worked well with the BRD. The relationships have been good, and that's kind of what we're looking to continue. You know, sometimes we hear this comment about the lands need to benefit the whole MD, which yes, they do benefit the whole MD. The MD gets tax revenue, the MD gets lease revenue, but everything in the MD doesn't just benefit the whole MD, right? So this has benefited more the Vauxhall community because it's in Vauxhall, right? There's projects that the MD does that are in other portions of the MD that they benefit those portions of the MD. So we all need to work together in knowing that, yeah, these lands are here, these lands are here. It all benefits different communities wherever those lands may be.
Thank you. Any other thoughts or questions?
No, but no, we. No, we appreciate your thoughts last night as well, and yeah, those are some of the data, and those are two pieces, and there's going to be many more too that will factor into those, that we'll be presenting to council as information too, to demonstrate some of the importance of these lands.
Just one of the other things is in those reports they make reference to some of the layers that we'd mentioned as far as data layers, mapping layers that help to represent some of these specific contributing variables, contributing information sources, and they are available, and we listed a few of them there. And you know, as they are established or identified, you know, we will be continuing to look into those as well. So they do tie back into the report. So.
Thanks, Chris. Yeah. the, sure, or hold it closer to my mouth. Okay. Yeah, there's no question that the vast majority of leaseholders at the MD have done a great job of stewarding those lands. That's not the question at hand here. It's just how we're moving forward when these leases expire. So that report you speak of from the NCC, and that was a report done they just to acquire some more information about our lands, and then they were willing to do that for us for no cost. So of course we're going to say yes. So that will put we mentioned the website specifically put on a special link to our land management plan. We can load that on there as well, so others can read that rather than print out a whole bunch of copies of it.
I'd like to comment. You said how we take care of the land is not the real issue today. If it's up for tender and the land is not taken care of, nobody's going to tender for it because it's overgrazed. It's abused the hell out of it. And because of the drought, we've had to take care of the land and cut our production and cut our lifestyle and lose a little bit of money in anticipation that we'll be back in the game so that we can pay our leases. It's all connected to all, if the land comes up for tender, sorry Brian, but tendering and all that land is stewarded, you can't pay for the tender if you don't have good production.
No.
Couldn't be more wrong on that comment.
On my comment that the lands weren't stewarded properly by the current leaseholders?
The way the land was, the stewardship, and most of us do a pretty good job of it, you said,
Yes.
and that really wasn't the issue today. I'm sorry, but they're all connected.
No, you're right. The issue is that the leases are expiring in 2 years, and that's why. I mean, there's no extension on those lease terms, and that's why we're here today to see what you folks want to see on those lands going forward. And I think we're hearing lots of that tonight, that you want to see it stay basically the same. But the leases, the terms of those leases, it's been 20 years since we've revisited those rates on those leases. So times have changed in that regard too. So I can't speak to the fact of what that might look like. Of course, we keep saying that because that's the truth. We really haven't had fulsome discussions with council on this yet. We wanted to hear from the public and the leaseholders and all the residents of the MD, and of course the people that come out are the people that are most affected by changes in those leases. So we're not seeing a bunch of people from Tabor or from the town of Vauxhall, but that's what we expected to see. So it's a process that we're going to slowly work through. Yep.
I'm just curious how many people here have had land over 50 years? Have held the land over 50 years? Okay, so quite a few of us. You know, and we've had ours, you know, up to 100, right? So what I would say, and I'm going back to my comment about setting aside historical lands, I would love to see the MD consider a program that if you need to put us through hoops, man, put us through hoops. You know, like if you need us to run through an ecological survey on our land or prove our stewardship or whatever you need us to do, but man, oh man, please don't let us lose that land.
That point's well taken. I think, as Bryce mentioned, each councillor has to decide whether they have a conflict of interest in that decision and that discussion. So it's not up to the other councillor, it's up to that individual councillor to determine that himself. And if he feels there's risk in being in that room and discussing it and voting on that particular topic, then that's his call, I guess. And I know that's an issue that has been brought up several times. No, that's valid. Pecuniary conflict. Let's just use conflict, yeah.
Mixed up very often, but I'm mixed up right now. So, on one hand, if there's conflict of interest, you can't, the council can't be in, but then if I might have misunderstood you. It's up to the councillor, he can stay there if he wants.
Like, there's rules in the Municipal Government Act, and again, maybe I'll make Bryce speak to that because he's more familiar with it than me. Hopefully Bryce doesn't confuse it.
Yeah. I hope that is the goal, is to not add confusion. So, but yes, as an individual, each counselor has to declare in the meeting a pecuniary interest if they have a pecuniary interest and if they feel they have a pecuniary interest. So it's up to each individual counselor to interpret their own circumstance based on pecuniary interest and then identify that in the meeting. And so, again, each individual has to go through that assessment for the topic on hand and then determine whether or not they have that interest, that pecuniary interest. And then, again, identify it. They can't take part in the discussions and they would have to leave the room at that point. So those that are left for the decision making at that point are those that don't have the interest. They don't have the pecuniary interest. So there could be, depending on the circumstance, it could be a different number for different topics, obviously. So it could be 6, 5, depending on the circumstances. And for quorum, of course, that follows our procedure. So as we get to the point of decision making, council has to identify is there quorum established, and then they make decisions based on that. And there's other alternatives in the MGA for solutions if we aren't able to establish quorum through our procedures. So.
Could be excused, should not really be excused. They've got voted in from taxpayers. They're a taxpayer as his voted in. So if you're a taxpayer, all the taxpayers, they should not be excused because they are voted in by the taxpayers. I don't think that they should be excused from the voting process.
Yeah, appreciate your perspective, absolutely. So there is one in the summary that I might just read out here that maybe a different way of wording it, but we can just read it out loud here as part of the conversation. But the pecuniary interest provisions are designed to ensure that when sitting on council, a council committee or any other body to which a councillor is appointed as a representative council, a councillor's financial interests are not at odds with their public obligations. So that's, in summary, that is really what they're trying to explain there, is just with regards to the topic on the table, it becomes a pecuniary interest for the specific topic, not as for instance, a topic that involves the whole, like setting mill rates, like tax rates. It's a very specific topic that they have a pecuniary interest in, and that is what sets it aside from the more general provisions. No, good comments, good feedback. It's definitely something that we've taken note, and it's good feedback from the public as far as our consultation goes, and the MGA does stipulate these things for councils to ensure that they address the pecuniary interest in the municipalities. As part of a project team, we go through these processes. This is just one step, but go through these processes to gather information and present that information in a way that gives council a breadth of the whole project. What are all the circumstances? What are all the impacts and all the variables and options? And it's presented to council alike. So each individual councillor, whichever councillors are in the room with the discussion at hand, we present that information in a way that we can process. The council has the opportunity to ask questions. We go through that process in order to do a thorough assessment of it and give council the full opportunity to make those decisions, giving council many opportunities to ask questions of us as a project team, and that we rely on that process to make sure that we can get to a decision that's good for the best interest of the community as part of our process. So. I can hear you.
We understand a conflict of interest can create corruption, and that's, you are trying to protect us from corruption. The trick is you remove representation. So somehow we will have to be represented, and our views be represented from this area, which is a unique area.
Yeah. Well, we appreciate your perspective and sharing that with us today for sure.
It's very different. Ecologically.
And I think that, again, I go back to the process that we're following. We're really trying to make sure that, we do access the data. We access the data, we provide the data, we summarize data as a whole, as an entire municipality. We certainly don't look at, we get granular in our approach possibly, like when we're looking at parcels of land, like we talked about. But as a project, we really are looking at the whole project and all the different leases, and we really are trying to deal with it as a holistic project. We're really not trying to lose that representation in the process is what we're looking for. So. You good? You're talking loud.
Just that, I understand the conflict and all that, but I guess as MD taxpayers and land renters and landowners, when this comes up, like, we try and get the representative that in our area that is going to represent us. And how many of us knew that possibly our representative can't represent us on a very critical situation? And now we're faced with, it's okay, we'll look after you, but we're counting on our representative to be there for us. And in some cases now he or she might have to excuse themselves. So.
Again, very much appreciate your perspective. One of the things I would add too is that these processes that we're doing today, as far as public consultation and tomorrow as well, we have a 2 o'clock and then a 7 o'clock, so that we get an opportunity for people to come out during the day as well, are really key in gathering this feedback for all of council as part of this process. So, we really are weighing heavily on these steps of our project, and really hoping that we can communicate with you as well as you communicate with us, and that's really what we're here to do. So.
You get the pecuniary interest out of the way and let our reps represent us. I'm pretty sure that MD is comfortable with the way that we've taken care of the lands and the grasslands especially. I would sure hope that loyalty, based on the landowners and the stakeholders, I'd trust that loyalty would factor into this hugely. If I rent out land to somebody, I literally check out how they're going to steward that land. If I know that they're going to work the crap out of it and it's going to blow, I'm not going to rent it to them. Same thing, right? If somebody's not going to graze it properly, that's not the way to go. So if you go for the highest rate, the whole fact that there's tendering on the table even as an option, that's concerning. I don't think chasing money is the right way to go on this.
Yeah, again, duly noted. We'll, we are gathering feedback on all topics of the project. So, certainly we do have a number of people in the room capturing feedback. So, again, appreciate your perspective. I'll pass the mic back to Ben, but on behalf of our project team, we do very much appreciate everyone and participating, coming out to the meetings, coming out to all of them, making sure that if you have additional contributions, you certainly do take that time. We do appreciate your time, and again, this is part of a process that we're going through, and we hope we get the opportunity to get through these different consultations with the public and gather it in our what we heard report. So that would be our follow-up from the public consultation. And
I have one question or a comment. I may talk to the public, but so I took the survey, and I would just like to point out about the survey. I don't know how much weight you can put to that. I'm the secretary of the Vauxhall Grazing, so I know a little bit about the business, but I don't know about your businesses. So me answering some of those questions, I didn't feel like I could make an educated, click. So I look at how many leaseholders are out of all those letters you guys sent. How many surveys did you guys mail out? Like, what percentage are actually leaseholders who understand the business? So I just want to say that when you guys look at this survey, the people who understand the stewardship, the maintenance, when you say just increase this, as someone who might not know, yeah, you need someone to pay the most they can pay. But you don't understand that they've put money into this land. They're paying lease, they bought that lease. So I don't think to take the survey, I had all the information, if that makes sense.
yeah, no, definitely appreciate your thoughts. I don't know how many responses we've had to the survey. Maybe.
Yeah, we're just over 30 responses at this time. We do expect that more will come in after these sessions. Now, one of the questions in the survey is asking people whether or not they are a leaseholder, and we do include that question very intentionally so that we can show that as part of the report as well. So we are trying to consider it from every angle.
I would also add that there was a number of comment boxes added to the survey, and they're throughout the survey. So take the opportunity if you want to elaborate or you want to present your perspective on a certain question in your own way. Take that opportunity, and please do that. We will capture all of the feedback as part of the process. So. Or a hard copy, whatever you prefer. If technology isn't your thing, then by all means, you want to write it out on hard copy. We mentioned at the last meeting in Hayes, we said, if you're having a hard time getting it to us, let us know. We'll certainly come out and get it. Whatever it takes, we'll gather it, and we'll include it as in our what we heard report, so that we gather as much as we can. So.
Okay, well, if there are no other comments or questions at this time, we'll close off the formal portion. I don't even know what time it is right now, but we do have the room until about 9 o'clock. So feel free if you want. We'll be obviously sticking around, and you can come and chat with anybody one-on-one as well. If you didn't want to ask a question or make a comment, standing up and speaking in front of everybody. So we are here to chat a little bit further until 9 p.m. And then we do have the 2 sessions tomorrow as well. If you'd like to attend those, you're certainly welcome to attend more than one. And then again, we do encourage you to fill out the survey. So thank you all very much for attending. We do appreciate your feedback.